Welcome to the Creative Academy. I'm Donna Barker, and today it is my great pleasure to have with me John Mavin, who is the author of this fabulous book of short stories called Rage. I finished this book in a very short amount of time because the stories are just so compelling and almost without exception left me thinking, oh, like what happens next? I want every one of those short stories to be a full novel because the characters, I love characters. Anyway, the characters are just so great in this book. So John and I met at a conference and where we were both doing workshops. John has taught creative writing at Capilano University, at Simon Fraser University, at UBC, the University of British Columbia, with new shoots through the Vancouver School Board and the Learning Exchange in Vancouver's downtown east side. Where haven't you taught, John?
My children.
All right.
I've tried. We just don't work out that way.
It doesn't work. You are also a graduate of SFU's The Writers Studio, and you've got an MFA in creative writing from the University of British Columbia. So
yes,
this makes you the perfect person to talk to about feedback. That is what I believe. When I was looking for somebody to share information about how to give good feedback to a writer, and as a writer, how to receive feedback, because both of these are critical pieces to us developing as writers and as authors, and also at the stage that I'm most interested in and the place where I'm most passionate, which is maintaining our confidence as writers. Because if something goes wrong at this stage, it can sideline you from writing. It can sideline a person from writing for a very long time.
Actually, one of the interesting things that I found when I was at UBC, one of the courses I took was about how to teach creative writing. And the prof that was running it, she had all the different profs from the department come in and give us talks about how to teach it. And one of the profs, his name was Keith Millard, gave us this wonderful advice about that. He says, look, you've got something really almost sacred in your hands that people desire to write. And if you say the wrong word, you can kill that desire forever. So it's like, God, I never, ever want to do that. But yeah, it's incredibly powerful, not just for a short time, but you could make it so they will never, ever write a story again.
Right. Okay.
But
so
as a teacher, that scares the crap out of me.
So yeah, and that happened, it almost happened to me, well, for not a very, very long time. It happened to me that I didn't write for a very long time after I received feedback that there were two pieces that went into play there, I believe. It took me a long time to see the role that I played in how I received the feedback in the wrong way. But the feedback that I got on my very first manuscript was really hard. It was harsh. And so, and it used words like unbelievable, unlikable, like lots of negative words that made me, and I connected with my character, of course, because it was my very first work of fiction or of creative writing, because my background is entirely in nonfiction and writing for other people. It was the first thing I wrote in my voice. So I took that and I couldn't write for years after that. Once I was able to come out of that and realize that my interpretation also played a role, thankfully, I got back to it. And then that's when I started being much more careful about who I will let read my work. So this isn't something, I know a lot of writers that I've spoken to over the last number of years that have been parts of Writers Group. There are writers who have written so prolifically and never shared their words because of this fear. And it's legitimate.
Oh, absolutely. Right? Well, of course. And especially like when you're saying like one of your first manuscripts getting critiqued so harshly, your very first time you share your creative work with someone else, that is scary as hell. How much can I swear?
You can swear.
That's scary as fuck.
Okay. It's scary.
It is. And it's like something that's so close to your heart and it's so personal. And like for you to put that out for the first time takes an awful lot of bravery and a lot of courage to do that. And if it doesn't get received well, or people that don't know how to give proper feedback, that can be eternal forever after that. That is awful.
So that's the piece I'd love for you to talk about is how can we, as writers who are seeking people to read our work, number one, it's two sides to the question. How do we find people, well, how do we help people give us the feedback that will help us? I guess that's really the basic question, right? Now, you mentioned, and I've not seen this resource before, but the John Volkmer's 10 Commandments of Workshop Criticism from, there we go, from Fiction Workshop
There we go.
Companion. So I've never seen that resource before, and
Okay.
anything with, the 10 Commandments is always compelling. So what are these 10 Commandments,
All
or
right.
what from them should we be paying attention to?
Well, tell you what, I'll read the 10 Commandments.
Okay.
And then we can go through them and dissect them one by one, or we can skip however we go through it. But it's interesting because the way Volkmer set up his book is how to set up a writing workshop.
Yeah.
Which is the primary method that I've encountered in how to teach writing creatively. And it doesn't work for everybody, especially if you're a linear thinker. It's very difficult to learn from a workshop model. So what Volkmer's done with his 10, you got to say this like you're on Moses on Mount Sinai, like the 10 Commandments. It makes it very, very clear these are rules. Don't mess up with these things because they're there for very, very specific purposes. So I'll read them now, and then let's tear them apart.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So John Volkmer's 10 Commandments of Workshop Criticism. Number 1, thou art in the workshop neither to praise Caesar nor to bury him, but to help him along to the next draft. Okay.
Okay. Do you want to just go one by one then?
Maybe we should. Probably easier
because,
that way.
Yeah, I think it would be easier. All right.
Yeah. So what I take away from that is like never ever consider a story being workshopped as a finished product. And in fact, that's the entire purpose behind the workshop, is just to improve that draft and make it better for the next one.
Right.
You're not there to applaud writers for doing really good work. You're not there to slam them for doing awful work. You're there to improve their writing. And especially if you're a new writer with your very first story in hand and you're shaking because it's really, really scary, it's a bit of a comfort once you realize that everyone buys into that. We're just there to help. We're not there to tear you down, and we're not there to make fun of you.
Okay, so on a practical level, if I'm giving feedback, and so I'm able to extract myself from a workshop situation and imagine myself handing these sheets or electronic sheets to a reader who's going to be giving me feedback. So I'm not going to be sitting in front of them reading those pages, but they will be in some way communicating to me that they've read them and giving me feedback. So if they're not praising me, but can they say things like, loved this line?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, please do. The idea is to help with the next draft. And there's the other thing about criticism too, especially for me. If I hear one bad thing, and if I hear 10 good things about the manuscript, it's the one bad thing I'm going to remember. The 10 good things, they're going to like just leak out of my head as soon as that bad thing comes. So the writers need to hear when something works. That's also a good thing too, especially in feedback. So please, put the love this part in there.
Do you know, there's a woman who's in one of my mastermind groups, and she has written numerous books, fiction and 2 nonfiction books specifically for authors, which were written a number of years ago. She believes that they're out of print now. But point is, she's experienced. And she came into this mastermind group with the fear of reading feedback that she had just gotten on this most recent work that she had written. And one of the things, so she wasn't reading it, and that was why she joined, so that she could have the accountability to actually push this through. One of the things that I had suggested to her, which just came out of my brain, was to go and highlight all of the positive, because it's not just you. It's everybody. It's everybody who, I mean, I think it's actually proven by university researchers that we grab onto those negative things, and the good stuff is just, pushed to the side. So she went through and she highlighted with a bright yellow highlighter all of the positive. And when she came back the next week, she said, being able to look at her manuscript with all of that made it so much easier for her then to remember as she was going through and making the edits that there's a lot of good in here. Sure, you got to change that thing, but there's a lot of good in here.
Yeah, no, it's a very good idea.
So
I like
okay, that. So that is I like that. That's
number 1.
Caesar. Okay.
Remember, we're going back. Well, actually, Moses sort of predates Caesar, but you get the rough idea.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so number 2, his second commandment: the good in a story shall take precedence over the bad.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little bit what we're talking about. The idea basically that when you're critiquing a story, it doesn't equal just fault finding. And there's no such thing as a hopeless story. There's good stuff in there. Find it. Let the writer know about it.
Okay. Now, how do you do that? and again, I'm thinking, so if you're in person, you know, here's another thing that I've heard from writers.
Mhm.
They get the good feedback and then they discount it because they think that the person reading it is just being nice, or they think, well, you know, that's my family, so they have a particular perspective that is going to be different from an average reader. So a lot of us, even when we hear that positive, that hear the
Mhm.
good, that negative inner voice pops up and says, what do they know? Have you got, what is your thinking on that?
I love your highlighter idea for highlighting the good stuff. I really do. It's tough, and for me, it's a challenge to keep remembering that the good comments are genuine, they are honest. It's for me not to just discount it and to think that there are good stuff there. But yeah, it's a constant challenge I have, and I'm not sure I know a way to do it. I
Okay.
can say in an ideal world, you got the little negative devil on your shoulder and you flick them off. That's an
Okay.
ideal world. I don't know if I can actually successfully do that.
Okay. And
I try.
as someone who has taught at,
Mhm.
you know, the top writing schools in British Columbia, uh, is your experience that this is common for most writers, many writers, some writers, that, you know, discounting the positive, or is it a particular demographic? Maybe is there any?
I'm not sure. I would like to say that it's rampant, it's widespread. I really believe that it is, but I'm not sure. And I'm not sure how much, because I see a lot of it is the way I was raised culturally and within my family too, on why I see negativity over positivity.
Mm,
So I don't want to project that onto other people too, but I've got a feeling it's pandemic. I really think that.
yeah. Okay. All right. So it's something that we can all just go, all right, like just, you know, breathe through that and accept that people aren't lying to us.
Yeah, well, it's tough. Like just for case example, when I watch the Olympics, and I have a hard time watching figure skating, and the idea of I think it's
Because
beautiful.
you're a former figure skater.
No, I'm not a former figure skater, but what it is the way the announcers talk about it on television. They're
Ah,
taking marks off from so they start with perfection, and they're just fault finding the entire way through. No one's going, "Wow, he landed that triple Lutz. That was amazing. Holy crap!" It's the
right.
other way. "Oh, he only did a triple. He's supposed to do a quad here." So I see that negativity in a lot of places. That's why I think it's pandemic. So that's what I
Yeah.
try to fight against, because I really don't like that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have nothing against
Fantastic.
figure skating. Like
No,
I
no,
said,
I
it's beautiful.
didn't. No,
It's just how it's described and
I
put to me
understand
that
that.
bothers me.
That's really interesting. And what an interesting perspective to, yeah, it's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Ready for 3? Okay,
Yeah.
3. The workshop shall be a conversation, not between writer and readers, but among readers, with the writer listening in. So when I
Okay.
run a workshop,
Yeah.
if the writer feels it's absolutely necessary to say something to preface us before we go into the workshop, they can say it. But during the workshop, you got to zip it and you just listen. And
Okay.
it's a really, really important thing. And it's tough. It's really, really tough.
Why is it? I understand why it's tough. Why
Okay.
is it important?
It's important because as soon as the writer starts talking, and someone could get off on a wrong track, God, that happens a lot, but that's okay. They start to defend their story. And then they start to say, "What I meant to do this.
Mm,
And then I meant to do this." And all of a sudden the discussion is veered away from what's on paper to intentions which don't exist anywhere, just in the writer's head. It hasn't been written down. So if everyone's discussing what they intend to do, you're not helping improve the piece that's already there. So you
So,
listen to what's on the paper, what worked, what didn't work there. Afterwards, oh God, of course, talk about what you intend and how to fix that. But during the actual workshop time, just listen. And if your readers are going off on a different tact, it might be because you've written something that's not clear enough and you just need to fix it up. And it could be something honestly as simple as a couple words dropped into a sentence. That's how easy it could be to get the writers on the right track. It might be more work. It could be structural work, but
mhm.
just listen and see where they're going with it.
Great. Okay. Now, the Creative Academy, we've just started, Crystal, Eileen, and I have just started doing blue
Mhm.
pencils of the first, or of any 3 pages that
Yeah.
members of the Creative Academy want to submit. And we recorded our first one yesterday. And
Right
it
on.
was really so interesting
Mm-hmm.
to, I have a child who is now 22. Crystal raised a child. Eileen doesn't have a child. And this was 18-year-olds in a car.
Mm-hmm.
And we all come from different we're all middle class, yes, but we are all from different backgrounds, family backgrounds. And it was so interesting to see how we interpreted the words on the page. And I was like, I hate the father. And she's like, well, I don't see this. And like, we were seeing different things. So, and that's exactly what it came down to. As the author, you've got three readers here. What is your intention? You haven't done anything wrong necessarily, unless your intention is to make the father very lovable, and you've got 2 readers out of 3 who think the father's an arse. Like, then, you know, well, I better change that one line, which is making people interpret him as being, you know, unkind, for instance.
Yeah.
So, but it's really interesting. I guess I wonder if this is one of the commandments, but, you know, your readers are also layering their life experience on your writing. So
yeah, Volkman does cover that.
Okay, all right.
We're going to talk about it because, well, no, we can keep talking about it, but he's got that covered, so it is an important thing.
Okay, carry on. Number 4.
Okay, number 4. Thou shalt only partially remember the golden rule. The golden rule being do unto others as you'd have them do unto you.
Okay.
The idea here is if you as a writer want harsh criticism, don't expect everyone else in the group to want the same level of harshness that you want.
Right.
If you're a writer sharing your very first story, they should be treated a little more softly. Always honestly. Never be dishonest in your criticism. And remember that the entire goal is to help get the draft better. But if a writer has said, yeah, I'm pretty confident this is pretty close to being done. If I've got a typo, if I've got spelling mistakes, nail me on it.
Yeah.
That's a much different level than the first time a story has ever been done. Because honestly, at the workshop level, spelling doesn't matter. Punctuation doesn't matter. It's not till you're getting ready to just actually send it off to people to read for real. That's when that matters. But up until then, no. So gear the level of feedback towards what the writer needs right now.
Does the writer, in your experience, always know what they need? Do they ever say, okay, they don't know what they need?
No.
Okay, so we have to...
They have a rough idea. And sometimes you're dealing with personalities too. If you're dealing with someone that's very, very introverted and someone that's very, very extroverted, you'll be able to give feedback slightly different ways to them. And it's, again, it all boils down to respect, and respect the person that's there and give them the feedback in the way that they can hear it the best.
So it really does help to know, for the writer and the reader to know each other at least a little bit. Absolutely.
That's one of the things that I try to do in all my classes is when I do workshopping, I share these rules. And other things that I do is I have at the start of every class, we have come up with group guidelines. And it's the group that decides what the guidelines are. It's not me, I'm not imposing it. So we do it from within. Yeah. And then we decide how much respect is important. So I try to sneak that in there.
Yeah.
And we decide how much fun we want to have, or if we want to be deadly serious in the whole thing. And then we work very, very hard at bonding and make it a tight, safe group, because it's a really intimate experience sharing your writing. And the groups generally tend to really gel once everyone has shared their writing at least once. Then everyone's been on the receiving end of the whole thing. And after that, it's a lot freer, it's a lot easier.
Right.
But it's just trying to create that safety for people to share. Right. And then you learn what everyone is ready for.
Right. Yeah, as you're speaking, actually, it's I realized that workshopping, what you do in holding space for a workshop, is what I aim to do in holding space in mastermind classes, which is they're not necessarily getting in the situations that I've been running, they're not getting feedback on their actual writing, but it is on their experience of being a writer. Yeah. And the same thing happens. We set the rules together, and then by the second time, after they've spent 90 minutes together, there is an ease and a really, truly, by the end of a 12-week mastermind course, there are relationships that you just know are going to carry on, because
absolutely.
There's a real affection that gets developed for each other. So,
yeah,
okay.
I strongly encourage my students to get together as writing groups after and to keep going. And it's happened quite a few times. So it's like, yay.
Yeah, yay. Well done. Okay. Number 5?
Number 5. Yeah, 5. Okay. I got to get my Moses voice going.
Yes.
Thou shalt not commit the authorial fallacy. Idea being is, fiction's fabrication, it's art. Never, ever assume that the author has done everything in the story. Never assume that the author believes everything in the story. It's stuff they made up. It's fiction. Whether in your mind, you're pretty damn sure this is autobiographical, you must treat it as fiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can think you can go back to, I don't know if this is actually one of the real 10 commandments, but thou shalt not judge. I mean, that's what comes up for me. If someone, that
It
was
should
my,
be.
that was my, my biggest fear with my novel, Mother
Yeah.
Teresa's Advice for Jilted Lovers is, and these two characters are, one of them's quite weak and one of them is quite evil.
Mm-hmm.
And my huge fear was that people would read this and they would layer those characteristics on me, because how could I think of this if I didn't believe it, live it, want it to be so?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a huge fear that I had. And in the end, you know, I don't think anybody overtly said you're a horrible person to me.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. Like even with my book, we were talking about it before we did the interview.
Yeah.
It's like there's some really dark stuff in there. I think I used the word icky to describe one of the stories,
Mm,
and it's like, no, I don't support this stuff. That's where the stories go. So you've got to. It can be a challenge, but it's recommended to separate those two things. Okay, this only works in a fiction workshop. If you're doing creative nonfiction, then no, you don't have that luxury for that.
right.
But if it's
Yeah.
fiction, assume it's all made up, because it could be the author's just playing with something that's completely opposite to their beliefs and their worldview.
Absolutely, and to an end that could be educational as well. Like, I mean, the point. Yes, there was one of the stories which I actually said made me feel angry,
Mm-hmm.
and I understood. It took me a couple of hours to settle after I read that story, because it was so. Rage was the perfect name for that story.
Yeah, it's
And
harsh. It really is.
it really is a harsh story. But in the end, like, oh yeah, I mean, it's left me thinking. That's a
Mm-hmm.
good thing. It left me feeling. That's a good thing. It left me hating one character, and that he was a
That's okay.
hateful character, whether I knew what he was doing or not. And that's okay, because. But yes, in the end, I don't hate you. So
Good.
I,
Thank
I
you.
really, really admire your ability to tell a story that generates so much emotion. So,
Well,
yes.
thanks. A lot of my stories too come from things that, well, again, I'll go to the swearing thing, the things that piss me off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at my website, which is www.johnmavin.com, there's my personal plug. But I've got a section under where I talk about rage that has each one of the stories and the origins of where these stories all come from.
Mm.
So if anyone's interested, they go see, and you see the things that really angered me so much that I felt that I had to write them.
You know, that's so interesting. When I write my best work, it's when I'm actually coming from that same place.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I don't know why. When I'm in a happy, good place, it's a lot harder for me to write. But I write dark humor.
Yeah.
So, and maybe it's that dark thing that we share.
Yeah, but you definitely have strong emotions about it.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not something I'm lukewarm about. No, I feel very strongly about certain of these things. And the story that we're talking about, which is rage, is like, I feel very strongly about the icky event that happens. And I think it's absolutely abhorrent,
and it explains anyway. It's such a good story. It's such a good story. Anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Next, number six.
Number six. Thou shalt grant the author her givens, which I take to mean is don't impose your own morality on the writer's world.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
I think that one's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you just got to see where the story is going and see what's happening. And again, it ties in with the first one about don't believe that the author believes this. And
yeah, I'm not telling another story. One of the worst reviews I got for my novel cracked me up. It was the best 2-star review ever.
Yeah.
Because the author or the writer of the review said, starts by saying, some readers might take offense at the title of this novel, Mother Teresa's Advice for Jilted Lovers. It's offensive.
I think it's a brilliant title. I love it.
This person said Catholics might find it offensive. She did not say that she found it offensive. She went on to say that she read the book to the end. And if anyone reads the book to the end, that's a check mark on the positive for me.
Yeah.
So, but she was imposing other people's morality on just the title, which if you read anyway, it's a funny thing. So yeah, something definitely to be careful of. People do that.
They do. And you have to decide, and this, how much that is going to bother you, how much you're going to let it bother you and let it in, and how much you're going to be true to the stuff that's in here.
So what is your recommendation for someone who lets that bother them? Have you got a practical tip?
Oh, I don't see the book close by. And I can't remember who wrote it. There's a book. I can't remember how it was. The basic idea behind the book is to learn how not to give a fuck about stuff.
Okay.
And it's in the title, and I wish I had it close at hand. it's hard, and especially culturally and familiar the way I was brought up, making it so I'm not worried about other people judging is incredibly difficult for me. But for me, it's an ideal that I'm really working for, and not to care what other people think. I've had some advice from some other people say that what other people think is none of my business. And
Yeah,
I'm working really hard to make that true. I'm not there yet, but I think it's a valuable goal to shoot for.
it is. It
And
is.
how to do it, no, I don't have a clue.
When I made was able to make that switch, it was literally like that. I cared what people thought. And then I turned 50 and I thought, and there were lots of things. My dad died and he didn't accomplish things because he cared what people thought. And I realized literally on turning 50, it was like, seriously, at this stage, after this many years, I am who I am. If you don't like me, I can live with that. I can live with that. So
there's hope for me.
Just wait till you turn. That's right. We're 40.
I've got a couple months.
Are you that close?
I'm really close. It's this year.
Woohoo, milestone year.
It is. Yeah, my wife keeps saying she's looking forward to being 50.
I was so looking forward to it. 40
Yeah,
was so much better than 30. 30 was better than 20. God, I would never be 20 in my 20s again, ever. Anyway.
Things didn't hurt as much then, but yeah.
You didn't need as much sleep either. Okay, so are we at
I think we're at 7 now.
7.
Yes, 7. Okay. Thou shalt speak thy mind with great humility and tact. Idea behind this is it's the author's story. Period. End of the day, that's it. It's no one else's story. You're allowed to make suggestions. That's it. You can't tell them what to do. You can make suggestions, and then the author can decide whether to accept them or not. But ultimately, it's the author's decision.
Right.
Yeah, and to keep that in mind.
So if we have a friend then who we know is very opinionated, would you say maybe best to steer clear? Like, I guess for me, when I hear that, I think I could probably like quickly go through and see images of the friends who will tell me you should do it this way, as opposed to, I guess this is where it's coming from. If someone is saying you should write it this way, as the writer, you should have, I believe you should have permission to put that in a special box, because that's not constructive feedback particularly. What would be more constructive would be to say, when I as the reader read this, what I get is this. Is that what you intend?
Yeah. I don't think prescriptive criticism is very helpful. Like, as in telling you should do it this way. I've also been told by other people too that you should watch, like, never should all over yourself.
Right. Yeah.
So if you should do something, well, stop and think about it. Really? Right. Maybe you shouldn't, but decide about the whole thing. And if the person's really opinionated, it's a tough call, because the humility and tact, like, I am willing to give people leeway up to a certain degree as well too.
Yeah.
And I will give more leeway if they're critiquing my work than if they're critiquing one of my students, because I don't want my students to get in a bad spot.
Right.
Part of where that comes from is I've been in workshops where the workshops have not been run well. They don't follow these commandments, and you see the people being workshopped really close to tears. And I've been that person several times, and I never want one of my students to ever feel that. So I will be careful that way.
Yeah.
But there's also the flip side, where that opinionated person might have the golden suggestion that makes your story coalesce and come together. So it's a tough one.
So then if so as a writer, most of us are going to be asked, I mean, it is fair if we're asking other writers to be critiquing our work, then to be, passing it forward and critiquing other writers' work. So I guess the takeaway there is for you as a writer who is critiquing other work, to keep in mind that piece of not being prescriptive. Okay. Yeah. All right. I've just repeated that less clearly than you made it.
It's all right. Respect it boils down to.
Respect. Thank you. Like it.
All right. Number 8. Thou shalt not waste time belaboring editing or manuscript flaws.
Okay.
Idea being is workshop time is too valuable to worry about spelling. Mark it on the damn paper and move on.
Yeah.
If you get lucky enough to get into a workshop situation, you have a golden opportunity as a writer. You're with other people, even if it's just one other person who has given up their time to read your work and to give you feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. That's a treasure.
Yeah.
Don't waste it with unimportant stuff like spelling. Again, spelling doesn't matter till it's ready to go out the door.
Okay.
So who cares? And if it's not formatted properly, make a comment. But again, it doesn't matter till it goes out the door. It really doesn't.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Number 8?
Number 9. That was 8.
Number 9. Holy cow.
9. We're almost done.
I'm flying through these.
Okay, well, I got a couch too. He also has 3 tips that come after these 10 commandments.
The magic 13.
There
is some witchcraft in this. Good.
I think there is, yes. Okay, so number 9. Thou shalt be sensitive to the tenor of the discussion.
Okay.
I.e., if the story is getting too much praise, find something that they can fix and work on. If the story is getting slammed, find something good to say about it. Remember what we said earlier about the 10 bad things, the one good thing? No, sorry, 10 good things will get drowned out by the one bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're getting 10 bad things, that writer's probably feeling pretty shitty right now.
Yeah.
So let them know, because no story is hopeless.
Okay.
If someone has taken enough time and cares enough to write it down, there's something there that they need to say or want to say. And help them find out what it is.
Okay. Beautiful. I love that.
Cool.
I think that's the tagline. No story is hopeless.
Yeah, I think it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Okay.
well, we'll get to that part later.
Okay.
Just a caveat with that, but we'll get to it. And the last one, number 10. Thou shalt not pull rank.
Oh.
Okay. So if you've got special experience the writer doesn't, you can offer advice, but don't claim subject matter authority over the writer. So i.e.
All right, so here's an IE. I have 5 years experience as volunteer firefighter, so I've done forest firefighting, and a writer is writing about a forest fire scene and they get something wrong.
Helpful.
I can suggest that this is the way it would be in real life. So, but where does that feels like it contradicts what you just said.
The idea is to offer advice, like say, if you'd like help or if you'd like a special insight into this world, I'm happy to give it to you. But don't just say, no, this is wrong, and then just dismiss it out of hand. One of the stories in Rage is about climbing Mount Everest. So I've never climbed the mountain.
I wondered.
Yeah, I haven't done it. I have talked to many people that have. I've talked to many people that have been there, and I've talked to many mountain climbers, and some of their advice was utterly fantastic in the fact that, no, a climber wouldn't call this that. For example, one example, it's right in the first of the story, it's a thing called the titanium stove.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a titanium burner, sorry. Every research that I did online was telling me they're called titanium burners. That's what all the project manufacturers and the climbers are looking at me going, no, dude, it's a stove. No one calls it that. That line made it into the story. I'm like, yes, that is such really cool advice. And she gave it to me in such a way that it was like, cool.
Right.
And I've actually had that happen too, when people know more about something that I do and give me that feedback back. Those lines end up being in the story, like almost their exact criticism, because it's like, well, yes, because I still need to have this energy go somehow.
Yeah.
But you telling me how to do it properly, it's like, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, great. Good.
Yeah. Rather than just having me say, dude, you've never been on a mountain before. This sucks. Don't even try it.
Oh my gosh, that opens up the whole, can we actually write the experiences that we haven't had? Can a woman write gay male romance? Like, if you've never been there, how can you write that?
Yeah,
anyway,
they can. See, that's a situation where you've got 10 fingers. Most people have 10.
Yeah. I know where this is going, because with something I haven't mentioned, if you're loving hearing what John's got to say here, over in the Procrastinator's Paradise at the Creative Academy, John has contributed a Q&A, so he's got some answers. And in fact, I believe that was your very first answer.
I believe it was, yeah.
If somebody gives you, how was the question phrased? If someone it gives you advice that you don't like, you've got, most of us have 10 fingers. No,
it was about if someone tells you that you're not a writer.
That's right. If someone tells you you're not a writer, right.
Because you're the only one that gets to make that call. No one else gets to make that call.
Okay. All right. Now the bonus 3 that get us up to the magic witch number. The
bonus 3, and then I have an extra one to tag on top of that to make it 14.
The John Mavin. The John
Mavin one, yeah.
Okay,
so his 3 tips. And these tips are for the writer when your story is being discussed by all these readers, when you have to shut up.
Perfect.
Okay, so this is 3 tips for you to get through that experience, because it's not an easy experience.
Mm-hmm.
It gets easier as you do it more, but it's not super easy to do it. Number 1, get out of your defensive crouch.
Right.
Which I take to mean, don't take these suggestions personally. And this is assuming that everyone's obeying these 10 commandments.
Right.
Also, never ever make a personal attack when offering your suggestions. So that's for the readers to do that, not trouncing on someone.
Right. Well, I think it should also apply to the writer, because I have been in a critique group where this, things get heated, and somebody will, and it can get you've never had that experience. Well, you've never this, and okay.
Yeah. So the idea is stay away from that and just to listen.
Yeah.
Which ties into his second tip: expect conflicting interpretations and advice.
Sure.
Okay. Not everyone's going to agree, and that's okay. Accept what they've got and listen. Even if you don't agree with it, someone might have gold. I think Stephen King says, I think it was Stephen King. He said, if you got 5 people talking about stuff and 3 people say something, no, if it works, say if you have 10 and 5 people say one thing and 5 people say the other, it's a tie, it's a wash, don't sweat it. Do it your own way. If 9 people are saying something and one person's saying the other, those 9 people might have something. Maybe listen to what they have to say.
Right.
And he also says tie always goes to the writer.
Tie always goes to, of course it would. Right.
Always goes to the writer. So,
and we don't want to argue with Stephen King ever. All right.
I haven't yet. I've never met him. I don't really want to talk. I sort of like the guy. So yeah.
My husband and I drove from Nova Scotia to Vancouver in the fall. It was his first time crossing the continent. I've done it across Canada, and we went through the States, and one of the places he wanted to stop was in front of Stephen King's house. So have you ever seen pictures of it? It's pretty neat.
I haven't.
It looks very Stephen King-ish. Yeah. It's
cool.
It's really neat.
He didn't sick the dog.
There were no dogs. No, it was very quiet.
Good.
Very, very. It was the ominous, you don't want to open this gate part of the movie or the book, right?
Gotcha.
Don't be a fool and open the gate that's got the big gargoyles on it. You're asking for trouble.
That's how the stories work, because people. Anyway, we don't need to go there.
Okay, number 3.
Okay, number 3. Try not to maintain an overzealous loyalty to your original vision of what the story is about. You could come in with you have an idea what you think your story is and written it, and usually, okay, I would say 90% of the cases when I've been in a workshop, we're workshopping first drafts.
Right.
It's usually how it works. People have written furiously, they've got it ready for the workshop and they send it out, which I don't think it's nearly ready for a workshop. This is stuff that a workshop, I believe you shouldn't take your work there until you've done everything you possibly can think of to improve that work and you can't think of anything else. Then ready for outside help.
All right.
That's also an ideal world, and it doesn't normally work that way. So if you're getting this new work coming in, if someone sees something in your story, be open to it. There's a good chance what they've seen is way cooler than your original idea. No, it might not be. But again, at the end of the day, you get to decide. That's where I think he's going with that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Be open to it. Or maybe you've got 2 stories in there.
Exactly. And that's what I'm thinking. It doesn't necessarily have to be an either or decision. You might have, and I guess in some cases that could even be how series get born. You've just.
Oh, absolutely.
Your secondary character is the one that's really compelling. So you write the second book about the secondary character, make them the protagonist.
Oh, absolutely. And I find too, especially with my first drafts, even though I outline furiously, they're usually a mess anyway. And there's more than one theme has worked its way in there. And for my second draft, I try to whittle it down to one theme. But yeah, there could be like 6 or 7 in there, which I've inadvertently put in there. And then for someone else to see it for me, then you get to decide, is that better? Is it different? Do I need more work?
Right.
As in separate works? Yeah, so just be open to it.
All right.
Okay. And
the John Mavin amendment.
Okay. Most important thing about what you can do as a writer, listening to all these comments, the most important thing to do once you've heard all these comments, people you agree with, people that you don't, whatever, say thank you. They've just given you a wonderful gift. That time, that intense energy and focus on your work, it's a golden thing. Say thanks.
Lovely.
That's it.
Wow. What a fabulous place for us to end too, with a big thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
I'm so thrilled to have had the opportunity and the honor to have met you at a conference, and then to be developing this writerly relationship with you. Really thrilled. So
Can we mention the conference?
have we mentioned the conference, the Creative Inc. conference?
Yeah, it's Creative
Okay.
Inc. and it's March this year. So
So in 2019, it will be in March. Is that what
yes,
you're saying? Okay.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Fantastic. Yeah, no, it's a wonderful, wonderful conference that is very much geared towards writers at all levels intermingling and working together. And the presenters are the participants, and the participants are, it's just that, you know, when you said that thou shalt not pull rank as one of the commandments, that whole conference kind of embodies, it's different, of course, but there is no rank. I feel like that's what I love about that conference.
I found people very, very open and willing to talk about pretty much anything writing related and more. And I made some good friendships there. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so this is the book that will inspire you to think. Fabulous short stories. And John, thanks so much for all of your tips. I look forward to seeing you around town, around events, and just
awesome.
And if you're watching this video and you're interested in the Creative Academy, there'll be a link somewhere around to go and check out more. You can see John's interview and this video over there with some other great content too. All right.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay. Are you a member of the Creative Academy yet? Join us today and unlock a wealth of resources, masterclasses, feedback opportunities, and community events designed to help you reach the next step in your writing journey. No matter what stage you're at, we've got a helping hand to guide you along the way. Check out our free resource room if you'd like to get a taste of how we can help you reach your writing and publishing goals. Thank you for bringing us along on your writing and publishing journey. Crystal, Eileen, and I hope to see you around the Creative Academy soon.